In this episode of The Landscape, we're continuing on our road to KubeCon with none other than Jorge Castro, who does developer relations at the CNCF and is a standout community leader. As KubeCon approaches, Jorge shares his excitement about the Project Pavilion, an incredible hub that's quickly become the heartbeat of the conference. In our conversation, he unpacks how this pavilion offers more than just insights into projects. It's a space where maintainers, contributors, and ambassadors unite, creating a welcoming community for everyone, whether it's your first KubeCon or you're a seasoned attendee. We'll explore the evolution of CNCF projects, the role of ambassadors in guiding newcomers, and what it means to build sustainable open source projects. Jorge's insights emphasize the importance of fostering innovation, spontaneity, and collaboration, reminding us that every attendee has something valuable to contribute to the landscape. So, join us as we gear up for KubeCon, learning about exciting developments like Helm's transition to version 4, Kubeflow's ongoing expansion, and how consistency and community are shaping the future of cloud-native tech. Get ready to explore KubeCon from a fresh perspective, because, as Jorge says, this is a CNCF landscape, but you're in it. Make sure you subscribe to The Landscape on YouTube or Spotify, folks. This episode is brought to you by OVH Cloud, the global cloud provider delivering industry-leading performance and cost-effective solutions. From managed Kubernetes to private registries, OVH Cloud has the cloud-native tools you need. OVH Cloud, the world needs different. Now, let's take a look at the episode. So we're thinking about KubeCon and we're thinking about the landscape, CNCF projects. There is no one more qualified to speak about this than the guest I have with me today. His name is Jorge Castro. He's rocking all things when it comes to CNCF projects at the Project Pavilion. Jorge, for people who don't know you, I don't know how many people out there don't, but just really quickly, what is it that you do? What's your title and what does that involve?
Yeah, so I'm Jorge Castro. I'm on the projects team at the CNCF, and my job during KubeCon, CloudNativeCon is to make the Project Pavilion rock. So Project Pavilion is where we have booths for all of the CNCF projects, and they rotate in and out throughout the course of the session, or throughout the course of the week. And then our job is literally to show attendees a slice of what open source is like. So we have CNCF maintainers there repping their projects. They might do demos. They answer questions for folks. We at Linkerd did a release last KubeCon in Paris. They just did a release right in the middle of the Project Pavilion. And it's an opportunity for attendees to go figure out, what is all this stuff? So I like to think of it as a CNCF landscape, but you're in it. And you
literally
get
in
to
it.
walk between all the projects and figure out what you got going on.
Great. And because at the end of the day, we're talking about more than 200 projects. That's a lot, to look at. The precise reason why we have this podcast, to make it easier for people to figure out which project's going to be best for them to contribute, or also for companies that are looking for, open source solutions for the challenges that they're facing. I want to know more about your background though. How did you get into this position? When did you start working with the Project Pavilion?
So I started working the project. It was actually Chicago. It was a downtime, and the pavilion was not hopping at all. It was just dead, and we're all just kind of sitting around. I remember specifically it was me and a few other folks, like Stacy Potter was there, and we were just like, "This is really boring. I wouldn't want to come to this thing." So we kind of actually hashed it out on the show floor in Chicago. We're like, okay, well, someone needs to take charge of this thing. I guess that's me. And I've always kind of worked with CNCF projects. So before I worked on Cloud Custodian, getting that to incubation when I was working with Capilla at Stacklet. And I had Kubernetes experience, and I've worked for Kubeflow before. And I was just like, the Project Pavilion, the projects themselves should be the shining stars of this thing. So let's hook it up. Let's, and a lot of the adjustments were mostly logistical. So I got together with the events team, and we started starting in Paris, and from now on, we put it right in the middle, and then we get the best couches that we can in the entire venue. We put those in the middle. And then we just surround them with project booths. So we make sure that caffeine is always an arm's reach away, and that we're close to the restrooms. What we want to say is, like, you should be able to experience all of KubeCon from inside the Project Pavilion and have an awesome experience. So that's what we did, and that's what we're doing for Salt Lake City. So We got a cool loungy area. We want it to be like a lot of people, they usually say, why do you come to KubeCon? What do you love about it? And it's like, oh, I love the hallway track, But you have to know somebody to know where that hallway is, right? And if you're a new attendee, you might not know like who the cool kids are. What are people doing? This conference is overwhelming, right? There's like 12, I don't remember what we had in Paris, but it's something like well over 10,000 people. But we want everyone to have that awesome open source experience where it's like, I got to talk to a maintainer that wrote the stuff that I use at work, and I totally understand these things, and I was able to, I had this crazy idea of what I wanted to do with the tool at work, and I ran it past the author, and they said it was good. I got a great interaction, and now I know, how they think and what they are. There's a lot of that soft stuff that you don't get just by reading the GitHub repo. That's important to folks. So that's what we wanted to replicate. But in order to do that, you kind of have to know somebody. So we were just like, what if we could kind of codify the fun hallway track at KubeCon, but make it project focused. So when you show up, you see this huge buffet. You can go to a buffet and then just grab a random item, toss it on your plate. That doesn't necessarily make it a good meal, So what we're trying to do here is get the maintainers more involved, and the people that are using the stuff, the ambassadors, getting more directly involved, where it's like, this is the natural resource where all these projects are born. Maintainers are in here. They're working on the stuff. So this is maybe your chance to see what participating in open source looks like in Cloud Native, a little bit more than, just sitting through a keynote or a talk, to kind of offer that more, that homegrown feel. Because when you talk to people like us, right, it's like, oh, these things are so big. It feels so sanitized now and almost too professionalized, where you kind of got to bring in a little bit of the ad hocness. So this year we brought on a project stage, and we're just going to run project demos, first come, first serve. They're not going to go on the schedule, right? Like, we have tons of stuff on the schedule already, but who knows what will happen, right? A project maintainer might grab and do a demo. We already have a few lined up. We have some folks from United Patents that will be teaching attendees and maintainers about how to look for prior art in software patents, so we can help maintainers invalidate bad patents, because bad patents are starting to be used against cloud native end users and companies. So it's also a place for us to kind of level up. We have all the maintainers in one general area, right? But it's not like this strict, all right, everybody, I'm going to put you in a room and Nate's going to teach you about mentoring. It's going to be Nate's doing something cool at the stage about mentoring. You don't want to miss out on it. So in addition to that, we have ambassadors coming in and doing project tours. So we generally have groups of people. They tend to stand around and be like, we don't know what to do. So on the schedule, we actually have ambassador volunteers who will go, and you could just have, you ever wonder what it's like to have Orlin walk you through the floor? Because there's just so much. So the idea there is, if you have no idea where to start, hook up with an ambassador, and they will take you on a tour through the pavilion, and kind of show you what they're into, right? Tell you what, because everyone kind of has their favorite projects. Some people are networking nerds, some people are storage nerds, and we're kind of trying to place everybody, where they need to go. Okay, so if Tag Storage has a booth, right, now is the time to bring all the storage people there, that kind of stuff, and then just kind of rotate throughout the space. Sorry, I've been talking a lot for a little while. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on there.
No, because there's a lot to keep in mind, and a lot of planning that's gone into this. But then, like you said, there's also the side that's, very spontaneous, very organic, of things happening in the moment. I think there are a couple points here. One thing is, for people that are going to be attending KubeCon, and perhaps for the first time, find an ambassador who you can reach out to. And if they're not going to be there, they can definitely put you in touch with someone who is, so that you have, this is like a buddy system. This is, as ambassadors, this is this is a privilege to be able to do this, because our job in a way is to onboard folks, to make it easier, to get them plugged in. And so like you said, specifically mentioning Orland, wonderful person, very patient, happy to answer questions, refer people to get them pointed in the right direction. I think it's wonderful how you're building on this. Where do you see this going? I know that in KubeCon India, there's also going to be the first maintainer summit, but in terms of, CNCF projects on a whole, what's on the roadmap there?
So really, the very first thing to do is, and the very first thing that's still on our mind was re-energizing it for maintainers, right? So that was the first focus. I think we kind of pulled that off in Paris, and I think we're gonna put it off in SLC as well. I think for us, the hardest thing is connecting the right groups of people together, right? Like, if a maintainer, let me just give you an example. If a Helm maintainer is looking for a contributor and they're standing at the booth, right, but we have an end user company that's going to KubeCon that's consuming Helm, but has no idea that, they can have a relationship with the project just by walking up to them. I don't want to say that's the thing that keeps me up at night, but if there was one metric I could measure, it would be connecting end users and consumers with the actual contributors themselves. I think is the next. I see that as the evolution of kind of the relationships that we have in Cloud Native. I'd like to see, Taylor and I talk about this all the time. It's the very first decade was very tech company driven, right? It was like a lot of these companies are the ones, they were making the stuff, so every day there was a tool that was solving a problem for you. But as we go into that second decade, right, we start to see the maturity of the tools now, and the organizations are a little bit different. So we have end users, we have system integrators that end users pay to go bring this stuff in. And it's a totally different maturity model than the early days of Kubernetes when we were getting started, right? Where everything was, the car's moving really fast. We got to make sure, like we were really, really moving really fast, and major breaking features were landing all the time, right? Whereas now it's a little bit more of a more mature vibe. We're starting to think more about the long-term sustainability, and sometimes people don't want new features at this point in the life cycle in a certain project. They want to see, right, that kind of boring pulse of maintainability, right? So those are the kind of discussions that we have to go through, because us as Cloud Native, it's also our second decade, right? Like a lot of us are old. We've been around for a while, in the industry, but for Cloud Native as a whole, we're going into our second decade. So sometimes it feels like you're doing a gear shift in a car, right? Where it's like, we have to change the outlook of what we're looking depending on a project, right? But also we love that we love that explosive innovation that we get, right? And that's the exciting part about the Pavilion is we put the graduated projects in the inside circle, right? And then the incubated projects are kind of like in the meaty part of the donut. But on the outside of the Pavilion, facing where the traffic is and where the audience is walking by, that's where we put our sandbox projects, right? So, in a way, when you look at the Pavilion from the top, it's like the exciting, buzzy stuff where people are like really interested in innovating and moving fast and doing all of that kind of stuff. But as you move forward towards the break area, as you move inside the break area, you should see, projects becoming more mature. Even the vibe of the booths themselves get a little bit different, right? Where like a mature project might be talking about its security audit that happened this year. Are there fuzzing audits, or maybe they just graduated that year and they're talking about things, production style maturity things. Whereas the sandbox projects give you a little bit of that playfulness that we want to see, right? That we want the attendees to be able to get the exciting, fun stuff, but also look at the important stuff.
To experience the buzz of something that's fresh and new. I think that's great. And just the distribution of getting the exposure for the sandbox projects on the outside. I know that you're interacting with a lot of projects, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but in the most recent cycle, in the last few months, could you give me an example of 2 or 3 projects that are catching your attention?
Yeah, so the first big one, the one I want to put on everyone's radar is Helm, because everyone knows what Helm is. But Helm is about to transition from Helm 3 to Helm 4, and that's going to be a breaking change for them. Matt Farina and Robert Sergia, they will have tons of ideas, and they're going to be talking about this in their maintainer talk and at the booths on, cycling Helm from that started off as a super, super hyper growth product, basically, right? To now, as I described before, being in that, okay, it's actually important now. We have end users. Let's look at, the vibe going from a Helm 3 to Helm 4. Their community's in the middle of figuring out what that feels like, right? So it's an opportunity for people that do use Helm to kind of maybe re-engage. And the project has actually been making an effort, and this is something that we encourage, is rotating out maintainers. Some maintainers go emeritus, and that just leaves room for new ideas to come in, new folks, and get the kind of life cycle part going. Nobody should, Rich Bowen has this saying that it's like, just because you do an open source project doesn't mean you want to be stuck with it for your entire career. Like, you want people to be able to healthily rotate in and out. So Helm is really on my radar. That's something that we're expecting. They're going to have tons of sessions available. The second one, I'm cheating because it's near and dear to my heart, is Kubeflow. Continues to move its march forward there, and it's really hard to say Kubeflow because there's so many components inside of Kubeflow that each one of them is also almost kind of like an independent project, but they're all related, and they always put on a great booth, and they have great demos and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And a few of the incoming ones that will be announced in Salt Lake City, which I'm not at liberty to discuss, but I'm hoping to see more of those coming in. And generally speaking, I always try to learn a little bit more about each one. So I initially discovered OpenFGA and Open Feature in Paris. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with those folks a little bit more. And the WASM folks always bring it. WASM Cloud, I know Liam has a cool demo that he's planning for the Project Pavilion stage. Is almost always going to be something very interesting for a lot of folks. And then the usual suspects, your healthy dose of Kubernetes, Prometheus, the tests I've been learning a bunch around. I think some of the ones that are AI adjacent tend to get people are talking about a lot recently. So time to catch up on Volcano, all of these kinds of things. And then always, I think the best part is you could show up and not know any of this stuff, and then you will just find, it's almost like going to a street vendor, like a food.
Yeah.
They're out. You might find something you had no idea. Existed.
I think that's part of the point here, is that while it's good to have a plan, while it's good to check things out beforehand, give yourself, permission to be spontaneous in this environment, to go and speak to somebody. And whether it's an ambassador, whether it's a maintainer, whether it's another contributor, that's what this is for. So take advantage of it. Like, you don't, this is part of the KubeCon experience that, like you said, you can sort of build your own hallway track in this regard. Now,
yeah, and I would tell you, don't have a plan.
Yep.
Block yourself
as someone who doesn't plan very often, that's easy for me. It's not
easy.
No, but I know what you mean. Just show up and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the warm up for that, actually, the lightning talks on the Monday are nice. We did those for the first time in Paris. They were standing room only for a while there, and these are really great because we usually put them right after registration. It's that first day, so some people don't know where to go because there's a lot of co-located events, and every con there's so many different co-located events. It might seem overwhelming. So if you don't know where to go, you could just go into the lightning room talk while you figure it out going through the schedule. And in there, we have a new lightning talk from a project every 7 minutes. And Lori LaRusso and Catherine Druckman will be, they're kind of dressing up, and that's going to be the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Landscape. So before the show even starts, you can sit there and get a feel for the projects. And then maybe later on say, oh, okay, I'll go back later when that project is in the Project Pavilion and they're all on schedule. So the lightning talks is a great way to be like, what do they even offer here? And then you can sit there. We make it nice and chill, so you can go You can enter and leave at any time, so you don't have to commit to it like a time slot. So we try to make the lightning talks kind of be like your trial run, like go in here. If stuff vibes with you, write it down. If not, then that's fine. So those lightning talks run all day on Monday, so you can dip in the afternoon or whatever fits your schedule, and then just decide where you want to go from there.
That's great. Like you said, it's just about getting, a sampling, a bit of a flavor, a taste for what this is about, both from the technical side as well as from the personal side. Because you said so much of this comes down to establishing relationships with people. So getting out there and seeing someone speak that might resonate with you, that it gives you the easy opportunity to go up and introduce yourself and find out more about the project. I like your point about, you don't need to plan this too much. Just kind of show up and see what happens. But have an idea in your mind of, what kind of contributions you're interested in making, what kind of things you've worked with in the past, so you can figure out, am I more of a storage person? Am I more of a security person? What's going to be most interesting for me? Before we wrap up though, George, I just want to get your advice on two things. So you work a lot with both contributors and maintainers. If you could only give one piece of advice on how to be a good contributor and how to be a good maintainer, what would that be?
Oh man, wow, that's like the hardest question in the world. I feel lately, especially, I've been talking about a lot of life cycle stuff, is I encourage to try to be consistent, even if that means toning it back a little bit. In open source, we tend to be kind of bursty, where it's like, oh, I'm really excited about a thing. And then you do a thing, and then you get excited and you get burnt out, and then now the project is hurting for the 6 months where you have to recover. So I try to recommend like a wholesome, just like a wholesome work-life balance. And that's the best part about the Pavilion is you're hanging out with your peers. And it almost is like, the intent is for you to have the support of your peers so that you understand how to figure that out to make it nice and smooth for you, right? Like we have maintainers who be like, wow, I just made it through graduation. That was a slog. Oh, I did that last year. Let's talk, and like sometimes just being around other people that are also in that same situation as well, I think automatically gives you the value. And we keep the Pavilion a safe spot. There's no selling in the Project Pavilion. So all the interactions that you have are there. Like we're trying to have like it's not like a show we're putting on for you. It literally is, a bunch of maintainers. Sometimes we hang out in the couch area and it's like, oh man, I had a really rough cycle trying to automate making releases. Does anyone have any tools that are, help me better at this? Oh yeah, and then just so happens someone from GitHub is there, or someone that makes another tool or things like that. Like you always have these options. And for us, the trick for staff is trying to get the right combination at the right time in the right place in that area to help people figure that out, which is why we're constantly measuring. We have surveys so people can science to me, saying whether it's useful for this or not. And then we use that to actually make improvements into the Pavilion itself, because we do want it to grow into this, like, ideally we want new users to be like, oh, this is a vertical slice of what open source looks like. And they see the contributors, they see the ambassadors, they see the PM people, they see their community managers, they see dev, all working, quote unquote, how it's supposed to be working is the vibe that we're trying to shoot for there in order to just make it better.
Like you said, the life cycle part of it, of understanding that, we all have, our lives outside of this. When we talk to maintainers on the podcast, I always make an effort to ask them what are things they do with their free time. A lot of them will say that they don't have a lot of it, but the time that they do have, travel, spend time with family, friends, do sports, things like that. Because in order for those things to be healthy, like you said, there needs to be the work-life balance that you mentioned earlier. So I think that's an integral part of this. And from what you're saying too, is a very healthy reminder about the fact that there's no selling going on here. It's just friendly people trying to have conversations that are trying to help. Everyone's there to help. No one's going to criticize you because you don't know the answer to everything. It's the exact opposite. They're there to answer questions. So I think, clear takeaways from this: check out the schedule from All About the Project Pavilion, when the tours are going to be happening. The ambassadors are going to be there. Don't be a stranger. Don't be shy. Don't feel like you need to have a plan. You can be spontaneous. Enjoy the buzz and the excitement of the fresher projects, and also check out, the ones that are more mature. End users, don't be afraid. We want to hear from you in terms of the things that are working, the things that aren't working, and anything else that I missed before we wrap up.
Yeah, when we do the cube crawl, when it's the cube crawl, that's when the pavilion is really hopping, because what we do is we get emeritus maintainers who want to go visit their old friends and their old projects. We get folks from the periphery who might, consume this stuff, but they don't get to interact anymore. And open source maintainers just tend to come and gather around the existing CNCF maintainers. And it's just a cool vibe. It's, I know this sounds weird, but it's just a cool vibe. You get open source people in the right spot, and they get talking. Cool things happen. The ideas, the interactions. I think when people say community, that's what they mean. I think is that kind of interaction at that level. And even all you have to do is listen. Sometimes too. Sometimes I just sit at the desk and I just listen. And you're just getting good advice. From a diverse group of people. We try to get as many people in there as we can. It's important to us.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I know you're very busy, and thank you for sharing your time and knowledge with me today. I look forward to seeing you on the ground in Salt Lake City. There's so much to check out in the Project Pavilion. Also going to be doing an interview with Lori about the talk that she's going to be giving. Hopefully you hear a little bit about the costumes they're going to be rocking as well. So that'll be good. George, thank you so much.
Anybody has any ideas on making it more fun? We're it's like they give us caffeine, couches, and chairs, and like tables with power plugs on them. Like, we can kind of do what we want. So
that's pretty liberating. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to think about that, because I think there's definitely some cool stuff we could do. Well, I've got my homework for the weekend. And once again, thanks just so much for all the work you put into this. It's also nice to see the results of how this is growing and is unlimited potential for the future. So keep up the great work.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be great. I hope to see you all there.
All right, take care. Cheers.